Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Next Gen MFG, the podcast where I talk to individuals in the skilled trade industry. So, this is my friend Gianna, and we met at NASCAR Tech. So, I'll kind of let her introduce herself and what her interests are and how she ended up in this trade.
Good morning or good afternoon. Now, as she said, my name is Jianna Shibunga. I originally was not gonna go into the skilled trades, let alone like automotive. I graduated from NASCAR Tech. Not the same phase as Nush. She graduated before me, but I took the automotive and NASCAR program with the school, and since then I have been moving around shops. I originally worked at Toyota. The dealership wasn't for me, unfortunately. Maybe it was just that dealership, but I have no hard feelings with them. Since then, I have been moving around to different independent shops. Currently, I'm at a Tuffy here in town with, and they have treated me very good. I've since moved up to a commission, which I honestly enjoy a lot more than flat rate. It's not as much pressure, but I still make a good amount of money. I moved here not only for school. I moved here from Northern Virginia, not far from the DC area. Life was moving too fast for me up there, and also I feel like just the environment down here is a lot nicer for me at least, and for Joshua as well. Joshua's my fiance. So I really enjoy it down here. I really enjoy working on cars, even though it wasn't my first career path that I was interested in. I'm very happy with where I am now.
How did you get into cars?
So I grew up with three brothers. The oldest had a 97 Prelude when we lived in our first house, and they would be working on it all the time. And that's what got me really interested because I saw that it made him really happy, even though it didn't make my mom too happy because it was really loud and like low key kind of obnoxious. But I was like, this is so cool. And since then, I've always been interested in old 90s cars, especially Japanese cars. I've been working on my own cars since I was 15 when I started learning how to drive because I'm like, I'm not going to a shop to just get my oil changed. So that's where all that started. And then it just slowly tumbled down there. And then I'm like, oh, can I buy a turbo off of eBay? So, yeah, I owe them everything to getting me started into the trade.
I think it's really nice that your brothers helped you get into that.
Yeah.
So, what do you drive right now?
Right now, I have a 93 Mazda Miata 1.6. I don't have very many modifications to it that I have done. I've mostly done maintenance. The old owner put on an exhaust, he's lowered it. Oh, he's also done a lot of maintenance, but no shade. I feel like I'm fixing a lot of his mistakes. I used to have, and what I had during most of my time in school was a 2012 Nissan 370Z. It was bright ass red. Everyone knew who I was just because they knew my car. I absolutely loved that car. I didn't get to do as many things as I wanted to with it. I unfortunately lost her in an accident, but I didn't lose her. I have her VIN tatted on my arm, and she's sitting in a storage unit right now, mostly torn apart, so I can get all the replacements that I need for it. I'm thinking about building the top end because the bottom end is really solid on those things for the motor. Swapping out the 7-speed dual clutch auto for a manual. I'm hoping some sort of Tremec if I can find a belt housing kit for it. And I don't know what build I want to go for yet, whether time attack or drift or just starting with autocross, but we'll see what happens. I haven't been able to touch it for a while, unfortunately.
Can you tell us about your time at NASCAR Tech?
Honestly, I really enjoyed my time at NASCAR Tech. Nobody really gave me that many issues besides the other students being like, "Ooh, it's a girl." Every single instructor I've had has been extremely supportive of me, even though I would have questions and whatnot. And a lot of people will complain about the curriculum either not covering enough or being too fast. This is what I've always told like newer students while I was still in school. As long as you pay attention, the classes are fine. That I feel like applies to most of life in general. Just if you pay attention and just knock the work out that you need to, it won't be that difficult for you in the end because really the work is not that hard as long as you dedicate time to it. And yes, it's difficult if you have a job, because I was working full time while I was in school, and I will not lie, that put me in a rut because there was very little work life balance, but it all paid off in the end. Like, you got to put in the work in somewhere if you want to reap benefits. The benefits will come in a way that you may not expect, and that's something that you have to look forward to no matter what. Just put in the work, and you'll be fine. I promise.
Yeah, and it's only like a year of school, if that. Like, you could, I mean, it's like a year and a half, but it's really not that bad. You hustle and bustle for that year and a half, and then you're kind of good for the remainder after you graduate.
I took longer than like that year and a half that those two programs were like expected to finish, only because, like I said, I did experience a little bit of my own difficulties while in school. But here I am. It worked out for everybody. So
I also took a little bit longer for my schooling because I took a lot of LOAs. LOAs are leave of absences, so depending on, personal stuff, you'd have to take a leave of absence. I feel like that's really nice because a lot of those students, they don't get to go back home for like spring break or winter break and stuff like that. So it's
yeah,
nice that they get an LOA to go and rehabilitate or go figure some stuff out with their
yeah,
finances or in their life.
or or even just take a mental break, or focus on work, focus on all of that, and that's what a lot of people use their first LOA for. And a lot of colleges that provide 4-year degrees, they don't do that. That's why I found this program to be really nice when it was offered to me.
So how did you find out about NASCAR Tech? How did you hear about it?
Through Josh, actually. When me and Josh first met, like in the DC area, he said that he was going to school for automotive. Originally, I was going to go to a community college for the program. I missed out on taking the automotive program that my high school offered. And that's why I was like, I want to continue with the automotive field because I enjoy it a lot more than anything else I was exploring at the time. At the time, I was in cosmetology in high school, and I was very close to going the boards and becoming certified. I also was very into human anatomy and biology because it was drilled into me as a younger child is either I become a nurse or a lawyer. So I chose nursing initially because I thought humans were super complicated but super interesting. And once I got into cars, I'm like, this is. I don't want to compare humans to vehicles, but if you think about it, the human body is a really finely tuned machine. The diag process mentally is very similar. So that's why I was like, I can work on cars and still apply all my knowledge here. And at this point, I don't run the risk of directly killing somebody. So, and honestly, I think cars are just easier to work on. Like, people, cars don't fly.
Now
And
you're an automotive doctor, so I mean, there's that.
essentially, yes, yes. I keep telling this joke to my mom, like, "Hey, I might not have been the doctor you wanted, but I can fix your car if it breaks down." I graduated back
Ugh.
in May, and so much has happened that it feels like I graduated last year, but I'm like, no, I graduated this year. What?
Yeah,
Excuse me, huh?
yeah, and also, okay, real talk, was it difficult at NTI? Because there's been so many people that have dropped out while we were in school.
I understand why they dropped out. And like I said, for me, the work-life balance, that's what got me a lot of the time, and that's why I took as many LOAs as I did. And I'll put this in perspective, right? I've been in 2 car accidents. My brother died, unfortunately, and I got fired from one of my jobs. And I got moved around a lot. Half of the time I was in school, I was homeless. I didn't have like a steady home to go to, even though I was using CHS, which was their housing program. They were not reliable for me at all. So I ended up not using their services anymore. And it was hard. There were many points where I thought about I'm just gonna quit and go back home. So I understand why people dropped out. And it was very, very difficult for me to convince myself to stay in school. I understand why people don't want to go through the program anymore. And sometimes people just think that the program's like either not worth it because they're paying too much money or they're not learning enough. And like I get that. I think I touched base on that already, but I don't think dropping out was the best option. I personally just don't think the school was that hard.
CHS is so difficult to live with. Like, when those college students are getting their roommate assignments for the first time, yeah, I understand how stressful that is now. Like,
Hey,
they were cool to me the first week, and then they got mad at me because I wasn't hanging out there at the all the time, and when I would go eat, I would eat like by myself.
The people doing like the rooming do not understand how awkward and how difficult it is for like so many different personalities to mesh together. Just because you match people who look good together on paper, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna work out with rooming with each other because
Right.
these people don't know each other. They have different upbringings, they have different standards and morals.
And I'm not
And
gonna lie, like no shade to white people, I love y'all, but
I mean,
it's
Audrey's
very
white,
exactly. I love her. I love her. Lucy's white. My best friends are white, but it's
Josh
just
is white, my freaking
right. Your
fiance's white.
fiance is white. It's just like I came from a city and coming from that very cultural area
Yeah.
and then moving in with three very white people. I was
That's how
like
that's how it was with me when I moved here because I'm like DC area. It's very, very diverse. And granted, my first roommates, not all of them were white, but moving into my second apartment with CHS, they didn't like me at all. And I think it's because I was never home, and so I
but like
wouldn't
why
really
is that your
contribute. But I'm like,
problem? If you're
dude,
paying
yeah,
your rent, it should not
that's
be
what I'm
your
saying. I'm
problem.
keeping my space clean, and I'm
Uh-huh.
keeping my part of the common space clean if I use it. So,
And
anyways.
so it was like so hard to like afford my own apartment after that because like rent it's like 15, $1,400 for
That's what
an
I'm
apartment.
saying.
And in like 3 months after I got my apartment, I had to take another LOA. But anyways, like tangent aside, roommates, it was so difficult to live with them. Like I think they're doing great stuff. I appreciate them.
Just
God.
people. This is why I work on cars. And
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So we kind of know what initially drew you to this path. And we kind of know what your life was like before you were going the normal Asian route, going to. No, literally, when you said doctor, I was like, oh, you're so Asian for that. So I guess early on you kind of figured out, or like traditional college was not for you. I'm glad you actually found that out before you went through those 4 years.
I
When you were starting out in the industry, did you face any major hurdles?
uh, surprisingly no. A lot of people said that I would just get looked down upon because I was young and I was a woman. Maybe it's just because I will hold my ground on a lot of things, and I am very humble in the sense where I will let people know that I'm either not comfortable doing something or I'm not as experienced and I will need help at some point. And I granted, you will find difficulties at some point or another, like being a minority or being female in a primarily male led industry, and you gotta be prepared for that. But again, I haven't had that experience yet, and maybe it's just the people I've worked with so far who have been really nice to me. The biggest hardship that I've faced so far is diving into the deep end and really just not having the experience that I would or need in order to get something done. But you just have to know that something is gonna make you uncomfortable. I surprisingly and very thankfully so, everyone I've worked with so far has been really nice to me and very understanding of me being like relatively green. That's not to say that I won't experience it at some point. And what baffled me is that a lot of the customers who complained that I was female were female themselves. But I mean, if you want to believe that a man will do my job better, I'll go all for it. But I digress. I feel like I'm a lot more thorough and a lot more clean than a lot of my coworkers have been.
Yeah, when I would be on people's podcasts and they would ask me that question, I feel like they would also expect me to be like, "Yeah, the men were like this, the men were like that." But it's honestly not that it's not that bad. Like they're all
Yeah,
so supportive. Whenever I have a question, they don't make fun of me for having that question.
yeah,
They're actually so eager to help. And maybe that is because I am a young woman, or maybe it's because it's very clear that you're interested in this
yeah,
field.
yeah. No, it's definitely a learning process to like learn to stand up for yourself. Because I used to let people walk all over me. There comes to a point where you realize that your skills are a lot better than what other people think about you. So you got to rely on the fact that you have to have the self confidence in yourself.
What's your take on social media when it comes to the automotive industry? Because I know that's opened up so many doors for people. What do you?
Yeah. So, not TikTok, but Instagram has opened up a lot of doors for me. I have a couple sponsorships. I'm sponsored by Mishimoto Clutch Supply LA. They're a really large Christian-based car club. They're based out of California. And then I am also sponsored by Fitment Industries. All of these people I have previously bought from or have experiences with, and I really enjoy their products and what they provide for the automotive industry. Like for the Z, I bought my wheels with the accident that I was in. I'm surprised my wheels held up as good as they did. A couple of the spokes did break, and but I think the worst that I've had was one of the wheels bending, either that or cracking. But I've seen wheels do worse in lesser accidents. So Fitment, I really like working with them, and when they still had a couple of the original people on their channel, I really enjoyed their channel. And Mishimoto, with all their performance products, I'm not as geared towards their like off-roading part, but Mishimoto's like their cooling products and their air oil separators, I enjoy those. A lot of people will like say an air oil separator is a waste of money, but trust me, when you own a high mileage car, it's not. I burn oil, and I know I do. It's because I have over 200,000 miles on my motor. But I really enjoy those two's products, and like as far as with clutch, it was really hard initially to try and find a lot of Christians in the car scene. I unfortunately was part of those takeover kids at some point while I was still lived in the city, but I thankfully grew out of that very quickly as soon as I moved because I noticed how much damage it was doing, and I couldn't like express myself spiritually being a Christian or wanting or expressing interest in Christianity without getting talked down upon. So just having these little tight knit communities within the groups that I'm sponsored with, that's really nice. Even though social media can give outlets and spotlights to the wrong kind of people, if you stumble across those who you're able to learn from and just groups that will align with your experiences, you're able to build a community based off of that. And that's what I really enjoy about social media. Like, there's something for everybody.
Is it hard to find entry level positions in the trade?
In my experience, no. Almost everybody's hiring, whether you want to go like to the automotive retail side, because that's where I started while I was in school, just learning. Automotive retailers are still always hiring. Quick lane shops, like let's say for example Valvoline or Jiffy Lube, they're always hiring. They're a good place to start learning. I personally wouldn't stay there for very long. Um, Even independent shops like my own, they're always hiring new people. They're always looking for loop techs and people to try and grow their career with, because that's how my company is helping out with me. I've been handed jobs that I don't think I've ever touched in a professional setting ever, and it's worked out for me. And like, people will want you to grow within their company and as a technician. And even dealerships are always looking for quick lane people, and they really prefer to promote within, because if you gain the knowledge from the bottom, you will be able to climb up the totem pole. And what they all have in common is they look for work ethic. So if you're willing to learn about whatever you're working on, and you learn all these tips and tricks from other people, and you play well with other people, you will go really far. Like, all you got to do is ask around, like, hey, are you hiring? Or just say, like, I'm interested, or I'm just starting out. What can you guys offer me? Because you have to show that you're willing to learn. That's really it. Also, pass a background check.
Is the background check really that extensive?
When it comes to a lot of dealerships, and from what I've heard, they'll look for people with mostly clean driving records. Like if you have like recklesses or felonies or whatnot, they won't be as geared to hire you. Which is why, like, I tell people, like, hey, don't be an idiot on the road if you're in this industry, because depending on where you go, they will not like that. It's really the driving record that a lot of people will get, and obviously like drug tests. A lot of companies won't want to hire you if you're like cracked out on the job. So yeah, as long as you're are within a good moral compass with the law, you'll be fine.
Are there any specific certifications or licenses that made you stand out amongst other applicants for your other jobs?
This gets brought up a lot with at least my jobs. ASCs. So I currently have my A1, which is basic engine repair, because eventually I really want to go down the road of doing engine building. I also have my A5, which is brakes, and a lot of shops, they will not let you touch a certain system on the car unless you're certified in it or have some sort of licensing for it. Like at least through the school, they help you with ASC training and like getting your ASCs and studying for them, and they'll give you your EPA 609 if you choose to take it through the HVAC program. You're not allowed to touch any sort of HVAC or refrigerant canister, and you're not allowed to sell it unless you have that EPA 609 because the EPA has multiple regulations on refrigerant. The AACs, employers will look for that because, like I said earlier, they probably will not let you do any of that work unless you're certified because it shows the employer like you're going out of your way to be certified and learn all of these things.
And for people who don't know what ASC stands for, that's Automotive Service Excellence?
Yes.
Okay, so how difficult was it for you to get your two ASCs, and how did that process work?
The most difficult part, honestly, I will say, is it's kind of expensive going into it by yourself. But if you work with your employer, they can either help reimburse you for it or they will pay you for it. It all depends on what your employer's policy is with that. The hardest part with it is remembering a lot of it. But if you have experience with working on those systems already, a lot of it will feel like common sense. For example, with me and brakes, a lot of it was very simple because it was a braking system. I've done brakes on multiple types of braking systems already. But on the contrary, A1, like engine repair, was a little bit more difficult for me because I'm not as geared towards internal engine repair and machining because it touches on machining and CNC work. But if you learn about it, you can get through with it.
What are some study materials that you'd used for when you were taking your ASCs?
Online, there's a lot of ASC test prep if you look for it, and a lot of it will be for free. I believe through the ASC website, they also will give you test guides, and even if you just look up practice tests, they'll very closely model how those questions are laid out. And what will really get you on a lot of these questions is the wording, so you have to read carefully. But if there's a lot of free test prep online, either through ASC by themselves or through different third parties, those helped me a lot. And you really have to keep in mind how the wording will get you because a lot of those questions are geared to kind of make you get them wrong because of how they're worded. If you got the knowledge there correctly and you're mindful of what the question is asking, then I think you should be fine. I'm
Okay,
not
that's
gonna
good to
lie.
know.
One of them, I barely passed it, but I passed. And it's because of how some of those were worded. And it makes you think. It really makes you like do a double take on like what is it asking.
Definitely gonna link some of the resources for the ASC stuff just in case some listener out there is also in that same, you
Hmm.
know, part of their life.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'll probably look some of the things up myself,
Perfect.
and I'll
Thank
send
you.
you what I used.
All right, perfect. What's some advice that you would give to somebody who is interested in doing this? Some soft skills that they would need to just be a successful technician.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Be able to communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it. And this will go through with your management or your service advisors and whatnot. If you're able to ask questions or communicate what you're doing or why whatever you're working on needs whatever you're suggesting, that will not only it will give you more work, but it'll help develop a good trust and a good bond with whoever you're talking to, whether or not it be a customer or your service advisor, because it's showing that you're being transparent. And for example, my current manager, he used to manage one of the Tuffies down in South Charlotte, and he has customers driving from all the way down there to my current shop just because my manager works at my shop. And it's developing that bond with them is what made it really important. And I'll say, like he says, keep it real. People will appreciate that a lot more than you realize, especially when it becomes or comes to their cars.
Okay, and what advice do you have for business owners or people looking for employees? What advice do you have for them who are looking to hire? Like, what could they do to market their job better?
Just from my understanding of marketing and whatnot, I feel like if you're able to build an experience with a company and let them know you're not just a number, because that's how I felt with a couple of these companies that I've worked for. Let them know that they're not just a number and back that up. I feel like when it comes to
Yeah.
trying to keep an employee, especially one that you like, or don't just be like, hey, good job, and give them a pat on the back and whatnot, or don't reward really good weeks or quarters or whatnot with just a pizza party. Um, we don't. We don't. Trust me, like free food in the automotive industry is a blessing, but we don't want that all the time. We want something that's gonna help with our careers or just help us financially.
Yeah.
Just because, for one, tools are expensive, and I mean we gotta pay our bills. But if you show genuine care, and not only to your employees but to the shop environment too, like if you put guidelines in place, like this is how clean we want this shop. Like if you take care of your shop and your tools and keep it clean, keep it organized, that boosts efficiency so much. It's just an example. Nobody wants to use a tire balance machine that you don't even know where the weights are. Like
Hmm.
what weight am I using? But if you're able to keep your shop clean and keep it inviting and think about what you would be most comfortable working in, then that will go a long way with helping keep your employees wanting to work for you.
How do we get employers to also get younger people interested in the automotive industry and just in general working for them?
Yeah, the automotive industry is pretty niche, and just automotive in general, because a lot of people are valuing, like higher education more. But if you're able to offer, like I said earlier, experiences, like let's say you can travel as a mobile technician, or you can get moved around a lot, or if you're doing contracts. Younger employees will tend to get bored, unfortunately. That's just me speaking from a general perspective. You have to keep their engagement up, and that will change a lot actually based on location that you're based out of. But if you're able to offer experiences and less or so, but still a good point, a good financial basis for your job, that's gonna help keep interest up. Yeah, and like competitive pay, though it does pertain to some of the interests of these people, you have to be transparent about how the competitive pay works. And also don't feed certain individuals. I understand why feeding happens because somebody can be more efficient than whatnot, but be able to teach, give these people the experience that they want, and that's what's going to keep them interested because they're constantly learning. Like they need that
Yeah.
stimulation.
You need to keep them engaged so they don't feel like, yeah, like another number in the book.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think employers or schools, namely tech schools, can better support people entering into the skilled trades? So, like NASCAR Tech, how they have the resource center for getting a job, that kind of thing.
I think like the resource center, that personally was a really big help for me and a lot of other people because they're able to find jobs. I feel like something a little bit more in depth, like hey, like here's a resume builder. At least with NASCAR Tech, they had a certain format just to make it a lot simpler for students to try and build their resumes and find a job. But I think if they were to offer certain like after school or extracurriculars that can help with career building or just trying to find your place within a career. For example, if you were offered some sort of class to help with interviewing, I feel like that could help a lot because interviewing will get a lot of people. They just don't know how to market themselves, and they don't know how to talk to these prospective employers, and being able to figure out what you're getting from a company and like how to read an interview. I feel like that would honestly help a lot. in getting people into the door into a shop. I personally don't think there's any like big doors or hurdles to anybody in the trades as long as you show interest. So,
What are your goals with what you're doing right now?
so another reason why I also went to NASCAR Tech, I really wanted to get into motorsports. The performance aspect is what really, really is what I want to do. So as I learn more being a technician, I would like to open my own performance shop. Mostly engine building, engine tuning, and the internals of a motor, they just fascinate me so much. You can squeeze so much potential out of places a lot of people don't realize. People will talk about building bottom ends and whatnot, and not enough people talk about building the top end because that's mostly where it fails. Because this is just general knowledge I like to put out there. Whatever you see on your tach, like, oh, I'm riding at like 3,000 RPM, your crank is spinning at 3,000 RPM, but your camshafts are spinning at 6. And that's where all the failures happen. And you can squeeze so much out of a motor and push the limits, and that's what I like doing. I like going to the extremes of something and just proving that a theory can work.
What discipline of racing are you most interested in? Do you have like a preference?
I was originally really interested in like Formula Drift, just because my initial interest with cars is the Japanese aspect. So like toge racing, autocross, stuff like that, and like drifting. That's what really hooked me into the performance side of things. And then I started watching F1 with Josh, and I started watching more NASCAR because we went to NASCAR Tech, and I live in North Carolina. Um, Honestly, anywhere, but like Formula Drift was my number one. I wanted to be a driver initially, but building things, even for NASCAR, like NASCAR's even with all the regulations, you can still do a lot. Formula One is just performance to a whole nother level on all aspects.
A Formula One pistons go for $90,000 a
It's
pop. I was like, girl. Thank you everybody for listening to Next Gen MFG. This is episode 4, and we got to talk to Jianna about her experience in the automotive industry and her experience at NASCAR Tech. We talked a bit about ASCs and how important they are, so I'll have resources for if you're interested in taking your ASCs down below. And if you're interested in connecting with Jianna, I'll have her Instagram and her TikTok down below as well. So you could go and meet her. And I think she's calling her puppy over. Oh, look at the sweetness. Oh my god. She's a little baby. Oh, she's a little baby. Oh. We love babies here, so thank you all for thank you all for watching. Make sure you give this podcast 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to this on. We're now on YouTube, so make sure you like it on YouTube and leave us a comment. Thank you so much.
Oh,